B. Me Orion, lead software engineer at a mid-sized tech company. Let's call it Innovate Solutions. Sounds generic enough. Pretty decent gig. The pay is good, the work is challenging, and I'm the architect of our company's crown jewel. We have this one massive, complicated software suite for a huge corporate client. It's our cash cow, our golden goose. The whole thing runs on code I designed from the ground up. It's a beast of a system, legacy code intertwined with modern APIs, a real Frankenstein's monster that only I and my two closest guys truly understand. My team is small but elite. There's Kai, my number two. He's a wizard with infrastructure and can make servers sing. If my code is the brain, his work is the central nervous system. Then there's Ozzy, the database guru. He can optimize a query like nobody's business and has saved our asses from total data corruption more times than I can count. We're not just coworkers, we're a well-oiled machine. We've pulled all-nighters fueled by cheap pizza and energy drinks to hit impossible deadlines. We've fixed bugs that would make junior devs cry. There's a silent professional respect there. No drama, no BS, just competence. The old CEO was a classic boomer type. Gruff, focused on the bottom line, but fair. If you delivered, he paid you and left you alone. Perfect. Life was good. We were just coasting, collecting our paychecks, and building cool stuff. Then, a few months back, the old CEO announced his retirement. The board of directors wanted to modernize the company's image. They brought in someone new, someone with a fresh perspective. Her name was Lena. She was young, energetic, and her LinkedIn profile was a masterclass in corporate buzzwords. Paradigm shifter, thought leader, disruptor. On her first day, she walked around the office with this unnervingly bright smile, talking about synergy and unlocking potential. She was accompanied by Malia, our head of HR, who looked at Lena like she was the second coming. The first few weeks were weird. Subtle changes started happening. The bland corporate art on the walls was replaced with inspirational posters featuring assertive-looking women and vague slogans about breaking ceilings. My personal favorite was one that said, "The future is female," right above the coffee machine. Okay, whatever. I'm here to write code, not stare at the walls. Then came the mandatory weekly meetings. They weren't about our projects or our client. They were about company culture. Lena would stand at the front of the room and talk for an hour about creating a safe and inclusive workspace. Malia would nod along enthusiastically, occasionally chiming in about unconscious bias. Most of us guys in the engineering department just zoned out. We'd seen this corporate song and dance before. We just wanted to get back to our desks and work. But Lena seemed to have a special interest in our department. It was the biggest department, and also the one with the most men. She'd often walk through our area, observing us, not saying anything, just watching with a kind of analytical look on her face. One time she commented that our team's energy was very aggressively male. I asked her what that meant. She just smiled and said it was something we needed to be mindful of. Kai, Ozzy, and I had a laugh about it later over lunch. We figured she was just another corporate drone trying to justify her massive salary by inventing problems to solve. We were wrong. It was much more than that. The big announcement came during an all-hands meeting. The entire company was packed into the main conference room. Lena stood at the podium, beaming. Malia was right beside her, holding a clipboard. Lena started with the usual fluff, praising everyone's hard work, talking about a bright future. Then her tone shifted. She started talking about history, about systemic issues, about the need for bold action to create true equity. My internal BS detector was screaming. She said that after a thorough internal audit, she had discovered a significant and troubling gender pay gap within the company. She paused for dramatic effect. A few of the women in marketing gasped audibly. I exchanged a look with Kai. We knew what our salaries were. We were paid based on skill, experience, and the fact that we were the linchpins of the company's most profitable asset. It had nothing to do with gender. Lena continued, her voice filled with righteous conviction. To address this historical injustice, she was announcing a new, revolutionary compensation policy. Effective the next pay cycle, the salaries of all male employees would be reduced by 20%. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I literally thought I had misheard her. 20%. A fifth of my salary, gone. just like that. Lena wasn't done. The money saved from this salary reappropriation would be placed into a gender equity fund. This fund would be used to give raises to all the female employees, thereby closing the pay gap and making Innovate Solutions a pioneer of corporate justice. She finished her speech with a triumphant smile, as if she'd just cured world hunger. Malia immediately started clapping, loud and fast. A few of the women, mostly from HR and marketing, hesitantly joined in. The rest of the room, especially the entire engineering department, was frozen. We just sat there, stunned. It felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the money. It was the sheer blatant injustice of it. We were being punished, not for our performance or our actions, but for our gender. The meeting ended awkwardly. People shuffled out in silence. The men all had the same look on their faces, a mixture of shock, anger, and betrayal. I knew I couldn't let this stand. As the lead engineer, I felt a responsibility to my team. I requested a private meeting with Lena for the next morning. I spent that evening preparing. I gathered data on market rates for our positions. I wrote down a list of logical, non-emotional arguments focusing on merit, talent retention, and the risk to our main project. I was going to be the voice of reason. I was going to make her see how insane this was. I walked into her office the next day. Malia was there too, sitting in a chair next to Lena's desk, like a loyal guard dog. I started calmly. I laid out my case. I explained that my team's compensation was based on a decade of specialized experience and our critical role in the company's survival. I pointed out that our skills were in high demand and that our salaries were competitive, not inflated. I warned her that a move like this would destroy morale and would almost certainly lead to key people leaving. Losing any one of us would jeopardize the client contract. Losing all three of us would be a catastrophe. Lena listened patiently, with that same fixed smile. When I was done, she folded her hands on her desk. She said she appreciated my passion. Then she started talking down to me like I was a child. She explained that I was viewing the issue through the lens of my own privilege, that what feels like merit to the privileged is often just the result of a system designed to benefit them. Malia chimed in, saying that my defensiveness was a textbook example of male fragility when confronted with systemic inequity. They weren't listening to a single word I said. They weren't addressing my points about risk or performance. They had already decided we were the problem. Our success was not earned, it was a symptom of a disease, and they were the cure. I tried one last time. Lena, this has nothing to do with gender. It's about skill. I, Kai, and Ozzy built that system. We maintain it. We are the reason our biggest client is still with us. If we walk, this project fails. Lena's smile finally faded. She leaned forward and said, Orion, no one is irreplaceable. And frankly, this company has relied on a toxic, male-dominated tech culture for too long. Maybe a change is exactly what we need. That was it. That was the moment I knew it was over. She didn't see us as assets. She saw us as an obstacle to her ideological vision. I stood up, said, "Thank you for your time," and walked out of the office. I didn't go back to my desk. I walked straight to Kai's desk, then to Ozzy's. I just said 2 words. It's a no-go. They both knew exactly what that meant. They just nodded. That evening, the 3 of us met at our usual dive bar. There was no yelling, no venting. We just sat there for a bit, drinking our beers. Finally, Ozzy broke the silence. "So, what's the plan?" Kai took a long drink. "The plan is we walk, but we do it right." And I knew what he meant. We weren't going to just quit. We were a team. We started at this company together, and we'd leave it together. The conversation was short and professional. We agreed that the situation was unsalvageable. The trust was broken. The respect was gone. We weren't wanted there. We were just placeholders until they could find a more diverse replacement. We decided to activate our networks, update our resumes. We wouldn't just quit. We would secure new positions first, all 3 of us. And then we would resign. On the same day. At the same time. We spent the next 2 weeks quietly interviewing. It turns out 3 senior engineers with a decade of experience working on complex enterprise systems are a pretty hot commodity. It didn't take long. Kai got an offer from a major competitor, higher pay, better title. Ozzy landed a sweet remote gig with a fintech startup, a huge pay bump. I got 2 offers. I accepted a position as a principal architect at a company that had been trying to recruit me for years. The salary they offered was almost 30% more than what I was making before Lena's pay cut. We had our exit strategy. All the pieces were in place. We set the date, a Monday. The beginning of the month, we wrote our resignation letters, short, professional, and to the point. No emotion. We felt a strange sense of calm. There was no anger anymore, just a cold, clear sense of purpose. We were taking back control. We were not victims of her social experiment. We were professionals, and we were moving on to a place where that would be valued. The weekend before, we had one last beer together. We toasted to the future, to new beginnings, and to the lesson in corporate dynamics we were about to provide to Lena, free of charge. The stage was set for the second act, and we knew it was going to be a disaster for them. Monday morning arrived. I walked into the office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The air was thick with a weird mix of resentment and forced cheerfulness from the people who supported the new policy. I saw Malia giving a pep talk to a group of junior female employees, all of them looking thrilled. I ignored it all. At exactly 10 a.m., as we had coordinated, Kai, Ozzy, and I stood up from our desks. We walked together, single file, to the HR office. Malia was there, of course. She looked up, surprised to see the three of us. Without a word, I placed my resignation letter on her desk. Then Kai placed his on top of mine. Then Ozzy placed his on top of Kai's. 3 white envelopes in a neat little stack. Malia's smug expression slowly melted away as she looked at the letters, then back at our faces. For the first time, I think she realized this was real. She stammered, What is this?" I just said, "It's our 2 weeks' notice. We'll ensure a smooth transition of our duties." A professional courtesy they didn't deserve, but we were better than that. Her face went pale. She picked up the phone to call Lena. We just turned and walked back to our desks, ignoring the stunned looks from everyone around us. A few minutes later, Lena stormed out of her office. She marched over to our section, her face red with fury. She didn't yell. She spoke in a low, seething voice. "I want to see the 3 of you in my office. Now." We followed her. The whole office was watching. We stood in front of her desk. Malia was standing in the corner, looking terrified. Lena looked at us, her eyes blazing. "You think this is funny? You think you can blackmail me?" I kept my voice perfectly level. "This isn't blackmail, Lena. This is a career decision. 3 separate career decisions, made for our own reasons. We've received better offers elsewhere." She scoffed. "Better offers? Or are you just throwing a tantrum because you couldn't handle a strong woman making a tough decision?" Kai, who was usually the quietest of us, spoke up. "We're engineers, Lena. We make decisions based on logic and data. The data indicates that our skills are valued more highly at other companies. It's that simple." She stared at him, speechless for a moment. She wasn't used to being challenged so directly and unemotionally. She tried a different tactic. "You're abandoning your project. You're leaving this company high and dry. You're unprofessional." Ozzy answered this time. "We are fulfilling our 2-week notice period. We will document everything. That's the definition of professional. What's unprofessional is devaluing your most critical employees based on their gender." That hit a nerve. Lena slammed her hand on the desk. "Fine, go. We don't need you. This company will be better off without your toxic, entitled attitudes. I'll hire a whole new team, a better team, a more diverse team. You'll be forgotten in a month." We just stood there. "Is that all?" I asked. She just glared at us. We turned and walked out, leaving her fuming in her glass office. The next 2 weeks were the most surreal of my career. We did exactly what we promised. We documented everything. Thousands of pages of architecture diagrams, system dependencies, and deployment procedures. We basically wrote a manual on how to run the Golden Goose project. But we knew it was useless. You can't just hand someone a blueprint for a skyscraper and expect them to build it without being an architect. You can't learn a decade's worth of institutional knowledge from a PDF. Lena and Malia were in a frenzy. They were interviewing people constantly. But their criteria were obvious. They weren't looking for the best engineers. They were looking for the right demographics. We watched as they paraded a series of candidates through the office. We knew none of them had the senior-level experience required to handle our system. Not even close. The rest of the company was walking on eggshells. The atmosphere was terrible. The people who had celebrated the pay cut were now looking nervous. The people who had been against it were just keeping their heads down, waiting for the inevitable implosion. On our last day, we packed our boxes. No one threw us a farewell party. We just cleaned out our desks, turned in our badges, and walked out the door for the last time. As we left the parking lot, I looked back at the building. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. We had stood up for our principles. We had refused to be devalued. And we knew that Lena was about to learn a very hard, very expensive lesson about the difference between ideology and reality. The real chaos was just about to begin. The first week at my new job was like a breath of fresh air. The office was quiet. People were focused. Meetings were about technical specs and project timelines. There were no posters on the walls telling me how to think. My new boss, a guy who had been in the industry for 20 years, just pointed me to my workstation, gave me the project files, and said, "Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Let me know if you need anything." It was normal. It was professional. Kai and Ozzy reported similar experiences. They were treated like valuable assets from day one. Their skills were respected, and their opinions were sought after. It felt like we had escaped some kind of weird social experiment and returned to the real world. We kept our heads down and focused on our new roles. We didn't really talk about Innovate Solutions. It was like a bad dream we were all happy to forget. But then, about a week or so after we left, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from a junior dev at the old company, a quiet kid, pretty smart, who had always respected our work. He just wrote, "Hey Orion, hope you're doing well. Things are interesting here." I replied and asked him what was up. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. He said he didn't want to put anything in writing. He sounded stressed. He told me that Lena had hired a new lead engineering team. 3 new people had started the day after we left. He said the interview process was a joke. Malia was asking candidates about their social views more than their technical skills. The new team was, in his words, aggressively diverse and spectacularly incompetent. Apparently, their first day was spent in a meeting where they discussed the problematic nature of the existing codebase. They didn't look at the architecture. They didn't analyze the logic. They said the code was a product of patriarchal thinking and needed to be recontextualized before they could even begin to work on it. I had no idea what that even meant. Neither did the junior dev. He said they spent the entire first week not writing a single line of code, but trying to set up some obscure development environment on their brand new top-of-the-line MacBooks, because the existing system was built on Windows servers, which they deemed ideologically non-inclusive. I almost dropped my phone. Our entire production environment, the client's multi-million-dollar system, ran on a specific documented stack. You can't just change it on a whim. The junior dev said the new team was completely lost. They couldn't even get the project to compile. They were treating the documentation we left behind with suspicion, as if it were deliberately misleading. Instead of reading it, they were trying to intuit the system's logic on their own. The inevitable happened about 2 weeks into their tenure. A minor bug popped up. Something to do with a reporting module. In the old days, Ozzy would have fixed it in about 15 minutes. It was a simple database indexing issue that occurred every few months. The junior dev said the new team stared at the error log for a full day. Then they had a 2-hour meeting about how the error was a manifestation of systemic bias in the data. Finally, they tried to fix it. They didn't fix the index. They tried to rewrite the entire query from scratch, using some new age programming paradigm they had read about in a blog post. The result was that the entire reporting module went down. Hard. This was a module the client used every single day to track their key business metrics. The client noticed within an hour. The call started. The junior dev told me he could hear Lena in her office, talking on the phone in that overly confident corporate voice. She was telling the client that they were simply performing a scheduled system upgrade to enhance performance and equity. The client, a no-nonsense logistics company, didn't care about equity. They cared about their reports. The pressure was on. The new team, in a panic, tried to roll back their changes, but they didn't understand our deployment pipeline. They ended up pushing a corrupted build to the staging server, which then triggered a cascade failure that took down the user authentication service. Now, nobody could log in. The entire system was inaccessible. This was no longer a minor bug. This was a 5-alarm fire. The junior dev called me again that night. He was practically whispering. He said the client was furious. They were talking about breach of contract. Lena and Malia had held an emergency meeting with the new engineering team. According to the junior dev, who overheard it from the hallway, the new team spent most of the meeting blaming us. They said our code was intentionally obtuse. They said our documentation was a form of gaslighting. They claimed we had sabotaged the system before we left. Lena, desperate for a scapegoat, ate it up. She got back on the phone with the client and told them that her new, brilliant team had discovered serious security backdoors left by the disgruntled former employees. She promised them she was flying in a team of cybersecurity experts to clean up the mess. Of course, there were no backdoors, and there were no experts. It was all a lie to buy herself time. Kai, Ozzy, and I talked about it on a group chat. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. We felt a grim sense of vindication. We had told her exactly what would happen. We weren't happy about it. We had poured years of our lives into that system. To see it being destroyed by incompetence was painful. But it was a mess of Lena's own making. A few more days passed. The system was still down. The client was now losing a quantifiable amount of money every single hour. They did something we never expected. They sent their own technical team to our old office. They had a clause in their contract allowing them to perform an independent audit if there was a critical service outage. The junior dev described the scene to me. 3 serious-looking engineers from the client company sat in a conference room with Lena's new team. They asked for access to the servers, to the code repository, to the deployment logs. Lena's team tried to stall, talking about their holistic approach and process-oriented solutions. The client's lead engineer, a man in his 50s with zero patience for nonsense, cut them off. He said, "We don't need a philosophy lecture. We need root access. Now." They spent the next 8 hours poring over everything. The junior dev said that by the end of the day, the client's engineers looked exhausted and disgusted. They had a closed-door meeting with Lena. The next day, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I was hesitant to answer, but something told me I should. "Hello? Is this Orion?" The voice was professional, direct. "Yes, speaking. My name is Frank. I'm the CTO of Client Company. I believe you're the original architect of the Innovate Solutions system." My blood ran cold for a second. I said, "That's correct." "We have a problem," he said, in the biggest understatement I'd ever heard. "My team has spent the last 24 hours analyzing your system and the recent events. They've concluded the system itself is robust, but the current team is, to put it mildly, unqualified to maintain it. They seem to have caused a catastrophic failure while attempting to fix a trivial bug." He paused. "We've also reviewed your documentation. It's immaculate. There's no sabotage. There are no backdoors. Just a team that is completely out of its depth." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "Innovate Solutions is in breach of their service level agreement," he continued. "We are losing millions. I'm going to be blunt. We don't care about their internal politics. We need our system back online. And the only people on this planet who seem to know how to do that are you and your former team." He made an offer, a ridiculously lucrative short-term contract. He wanted to hire the 3 of us as independent consultants to come in, fix the mess, and stabilize the system. He said he would handle Lena. I told him I appreciated the offer, but I would need to discuss it with my colleagues and with my current employer. I called Kai and Ozzy. We had a quick conference call. We all felt the same way. Going back, even as heroes, felt wrong. It would mean working under Lena again, even indirectly. It would mean saving her from the consequences of her own actions. We had moved on. We had better jobs in better environments. We unanimously voted no. I called Frank back. I politely and professionally declined his offer. I told him we were committed to our new roles and were not available for contract work. I could hear the deep sigh on the other end of the line. "I understand," he said, "and I respect that. Can't say I blame you. Thanks for your time." And he hung up. That, I thought, was the end of that. I was wrong again. The real climax was yet to come. 2 days later, I was at my desk at my new job, deep in a coding problem. My phone buzzed. It was Lena. I stared at her name on the screen for a good 10 seconds. I almost didn't answer, but my curiosity got the better of me. I stepped into an empty conference room and picked up. "Orion." Her voice was completely different. The arrogance was gone. The condescending tone was gone. It was replaced by a thin, brittle cheerfulness that sounded completely fake. "Hi, Lena," I said, my voice flat. "Hi, how are you? How's the new job?" she asked, like we were old friends catching up. "I'm fine. What can I do for you?" I wasn't playing along. She took a deep breath. "Look, Orion, we've had a bit of a situation here, a perfect storm of legacy issues and some unfortunate server problems. It's a real mess." I stayed silent. "The thing is," she continued, her voice starting to waver, "the client is getting impatient, and my new team, while brilliant, is still getting up to speed on the unique architecture of the system." Brilliant, right. I was wondering if you, Kai, and Ozzy might be willing to come back, just for a little while, as consultants. Name your price. Seriously. Anything you want, we'll pay it. We need you. There it was, the desperation, the complete role reversal. A month ago, she was lecturing me on my privilege and telling me I was replaceable. Now she was begging. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then I said, calmly and clearly, "No." Just that one word. She was flustered. "No? What do you mean, no? I said name your price. I'll double what you're making now. Triple it. It's not about the money, Lena." "Then what is it about?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Is this about revenge? Are you trying to punish me?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "This isn't about revenge. We're not contractors you can hire to clean up a mess. We're professionals. We choose to work in environments that are stable, respectful, and value competence. We have that in our new jobs. We would not have that if we came back." I delivered the final blow. "Besides, I'm the lead architect on a new project here. It's a priority for my company. I can't just abandon it. That would be unprofessional." I used her own word against her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing. It sounded shaky. Finally, she just whispered, "I see," and hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to her. The fallout was swift and brutal. The junior dev kept me updated. The day after my call with Lena, the client officially terminated their contract. They also filed a lawsuit for breach of contract and damages, citing gross negligence. That contract was over 60% of Innovate Solutions' annual revenue. The company was a dead man walking. An emergency board meeting was called. Lena was fired, unanimously. The junior dev said he saw her leaving that afternoon, carrying the classic cardboard box of personal belongings. Her face was pale, and she wasn't smiling anymore. She didn't look at anyone. The company started mass layoffs the following week, and the irony was beautiful. The first department to be completely gutted was HR. Malia was one of the first to go. Then, marketing. All the people who had cheered for Lena's policy, all the people who benefited from our pay cut, were now out of a job. The diverse engineering team she had hired was let go, their contracts terminated. Within a month, the company was a ghost of its former self. It was eventually acquired by a larger corporation for pennies on the dollar, just for its intellectual property. The name Innovate Solutions ceased to exist. Someone later sent me a link to the company's Glassdoor page from that time. The reviews were savage. CEO created a hostile work environment based on gender. Management is more concerned with woke politics than with running a business. They fired their best talent for ideological reasons, and the company collapsed. Avoid at all costs. Public humiliation served cold. Sometimes Kai, Ozzy, and I will grab lunch. We don't talk about the old company much. There's no need. We're all thriving. We're working on interesting problems, getting paid what we're worth, and being treated with respect. We didn't set out to destroy a company. We didn't want revenge. We just wanted to be valued for our skills. We made a choice based on principle. We stood our ground. Lena made her own choices. She chose ideology over competence. She chose to punish a group of people based on who they were, not what they did. And in the end, the real world, which runs on results and not on feelings, delivered the verdict. Karma, as it turns out, is a pretty good project manager.